Good evening. I am on take 2 because I accidentally erased everything. So bear with me. I promise these presentations will get better. Problem solving with your child. My hope with these videos is to help not only you better support your child, but also to give your child a resource to help them problem solve. So with these word problems that we're seeing, a lot of you guys have mentioned that they're incredibly difficult, and that is super, super true. And a lot of the times that we go to help younger people to solve these higher level problems, we automatically use the skills that we were taught in high school. So we go directly to variables and things like that because that's the fastest way and that's what we know. So to make it developmentally appropriate for the students, I'm going to walk you through problems and hopefully help you to help support them become problem solvers, because the math computation is not that difficult. It's more making sense of the problem. So the big idea here for all of the students is to make sense of the math. Now, I wish there was like a revert button on here about how to erase. However, again, I'm still learning, so again, they will get better in time, I promise. So let's talk about the first problem that we're looking at. This was a problem from the first test your students took this week. If you cut 10 ounces of butter into 2/5 ounce pieces, how many 2/5 ounce pieces of butter will you have? Now, one thing I noticed the students automatically wanted to go, what operation am I using? What am I dividing by what? What am I multiplying by what? What am I flipping? And they're so caught up in what operation to use, they fail to make sense of what's happening in the problem. So I asked them to read the problem, and then I asked them, what do you know about this problem based on the information that you've been given? And usually they'll say, well, we have 10 ounces of butter. And I'm like, okay, cool. What else do you know? All right, we want them in 2/5 ounce. Sometimes they'll say 2/5 ounce pieces, sometimes not. And I'll show you the problem with, or the difficulty that arises when they miss some of these words, okay? And then I ask them if there's anything else they know. And if there's not, then I say, well, what do you not know? What do you need to figure out? And hopefully they'll respond with the question that they're looking for or the dilemma that they're looking for, which isn't always clear, as you'll see in the problems as we progress through these videos. So once they have 10 ounce pieces, if they can automatically figure out what operation they need to do, then by all means, I think they should do it. But the focus here is we want them to be able to make sense. So if they don't automatically know what to do, then I ask them to draw out what they know, make a diagram of what they know. So in this situation, I would say, please show me what you have. Now, ideally, they've read that they have 10 ounce pieces or 10 ounces of butter, and they want to cut it into pieces. So ideally, this is what they will draw. However, sometimes in situations like this, they will draw a whole fraction bar, which isn't a problem, but it can lead to confusion. So, and I'll show you that in a second. Then I would ask my students, okay, what else do we know? Well, we need to cut them into 2/5 ounce pieces. Sometimes what you'll see is, okay, I want to cut them into 2/5 ounces. So I have my 2/5 here, and my 2/5 here, and my 2/5 here, and my 2/5 here, and here. Okay, and so they'll end up with an answer saying that, well, I have this many groups of 2/5, which isn't what we're asking for. Woohoo! So I figured out how to pause it, and I was able to make the question even bigger. So going back to what we hope they have, that they have 10 individual ounces of butter, and that 1 ounce is our whole, especially because we have this saying 2/5 ounces. So we know that our whole, or 5/5 of an ounce, is going to be 1 ounce. So if they don't articulate all that, that's totally okay. Again, our goal is to get them to problem solve. So we have our 10 pieces of butter, and we need to find out how many 2/5 ounce pieces. So again, that language is so important. That color isn't showing up very well, but that language is so important. 2/5 ounce pieces. And if they try to do anything else, I would redirect them to what it's asking them. Okay? Say, is that what you want? Do you want the whole 2 pieces in groups of 5, or do you want 2/5 ounce pieces of butter? And hopefully with that, and if they don't see that, then I suggest showing them. Okay, so 2/5 of an ounce means I have 1 ounce and I need to cut it into fifths. And then I'm going to look for groups of 2/5. Okay, so ideally they'll be like, oh, I've got 10 ounces, 1 ounce here. I need to cut it into fifths in order to find groups of 2/5. And so here are our groups of 2/5. And ideally, your child does not do this for every problem, but oftentimes what they'll do is they'll start a diagram like this, and then it'll click, and they're like, oh, I have 5/5 times 10 gives me 50 pieces. Okay? If that doesn't click, that's okay. We can show it to them, and I try to show it to them later and make that connection. But again, just a review of this information and the connections that we have. So going back to these groups of 2/5, we have our 10 pieces of butter cut into fifths. So I would ask them at this point, well, how many fifths do you have? Can you group them into groups of 2/5? Because we're looking for groups of 2/5, which means this fifth is the size of the piece, because that's part of the whole, 5 being our whole. So our whole is cut into 5 pieces, and 2 is indicative or indicates out the size of our group, or the group that we're looking for. Okay, so then we go back, and your student can start circling. All right, we have these groups, we have these groups. Maybe at this point, as they're circling, they'll be like, oh, I'm splitting my 50 into groups of 2. Okay, and so if you keep going, you're going to find that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 groups of 2. Now, students may also see, oh my gosh, in 2 ounces of butter, there's 5 groups of 2/5. So then they may say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 25 groups of 2/5. If they don't, that is totally okay. If they circle all the 2 groups, that is also okay. I will say that this problem was not one that I saw a lot of students struggle with. So I wouldn't be too concerned with their having to do all of this work to figure this out. And in the latter problems that we see that are more challenging, there isn't as much work. And you'll see examples of those in a second. So I'm going to pause. Okay, so once they have it figured out and they have a good idea of what is going on in the problem quantitatively, that's when I really like to tie it back to the algorithm that we see. So I'll ask them, okay, what operation or what number sentence do you see here? What are you doing? How could I display that information in a numerical number sentence? And presumably they will see that they divided 10 into groups of 2/5. Okay. Now, the algorithm that we see is we have 10, and we know that we can flip the second fraction, 10 over 1, I apologize, and to the reciprocal and multiply across, and we get the same answer. So what I hope and reinforce that they see is that this 10 times 5 represents 50 fifths. Okay, which we saw in our drawing with the 50 pieces. And then here, this 2, dividing it by 2, represents when we were circling the groups of 2. It represents the size of the group, which then gives me 25. Now, you may be wondering, why do they have to do all this work for this single problem? Well, hopefully, my goal and hopes are to help them visualize mathematics. When they can visualize mathematics, they can more quickly solve complicated problems. They can also kind of have an idea of what a reasonable answer may be. Okay, they know what they're doing. So they'll know that 4.5 or 4 5/10 divided by 0.5, if they're visualizing, they'll know that this is half of a whole. And they'll know that 4 has 4 holes cut in half, so that must be 8 plus another half, so it is equal to 9. Again, I'm super sorry for all of the crazy writing, and I promise, at least I will try to promise to get much better at organizing the work on this. Anyway, I hope that helps. I'm going to work on another one, and I will post these up soon.